And that's really the key in this. And I think that's something that we all kind of have here is that, even if we sell in slightly different ways, we all sell with confidence because we have a proven track record, because we know what our credit box is going to be, and we know that we understand SOP.
I think Sterling and I actually had it the worst with Ryan, with your flight being delayed.
Yeah.
Me and Sterling had to hang out at the hotel bar for a whole other 3 hours.
And we just had to keep drinking and drinking.
And we had no idea what your room number was, so I could put it on your tab.
Well, because they couldn't give me a room because they didn't have one for me.
Oh my God.
So I get to the hotel, we're 3 hours delayed. So I'm getting in and they said, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. We don't have your room ready." And there's a Tampa Bay Lightning game going on. So the hotel is completely booked. I'm like, "What do you mean you don't have a room for me?" He goes, "Well, the room we had reserved for you, somebody was smoking in there all week. So we can't have you go in there."
People still smoke?
Dude, I guess so.
In hotels?
In hotels. And so we gotta downgrade you. And I'm like, "Do you know who I am?
Oh my God.
Do you know I'm a part of the BDO show?
That's right.
Do I have to pull up in my Ferrari tomorrow?" And so she's like, "Don't worry about it. I'm gonna take care of you tonight. I'm gonna comp you tonight, and then we're gonna upgrade you to a suite tomorrow." So I'm like, "All right."
So it's
That'll
sweet
take
night.
care of it. Sweet night. It's
Sweet night.
After Charlie's, a sweet night.
Could be worse.
So I get to drive my wife home in 80-degree weather in a Ferrari with the top down and have the sweet night. You know I'm getting something.
Air horn.
You know.
Air horn.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the BDO Show from Tampa.
Hey.
This is a podcast for passionate BDOs wanting to level up their games with advice and story from battle-tested BDOs. I am finally here in person with all of my other co-hosts, Chris Hackney, Sterling Birdsong, Ryan Kroge, and Alan Peterson, and I am Emily Detour. We are so excited to be here today. And the reason we are here today is because everyone has been liking, subscribing, sharing. We're all able to be in this room for the first time together, so we are so excited to talk about this episode today. At the beginning of each episode, I'm always going to remind everybody to like, subscribe, and share, and go ahead and send over topics to the BDOshow@gmail.com. BDOs. Have you ever had a borrower bring in a brother-in-law to do their life insurance? Doesn't end well, does it? We've all been there. When you require life insurance on your SBA loan, it's critical that you bring in a company that specializes in getting these policies in place for the SBA loans. The last thing you want is for life insurance to be the holdup. We all know that's a rookie mistake. SBA Protection Quick Close Life Insurance is the fastest, easiest way to secure the insurance protection that your borrower needs for their SBA loan. Their process is simple, hassle-free, and only takes a few minutes of your borrower's time. No lengthy paperwork, no complicated forms. They even have programs that don't require labs or doctor records for approval. And best of all, you will have the collateral assignment back in less than 24 hours. It's a no-brainer. Go to SBAprotection.com for more information or email Adam Bergen at adam@sbaprotection.com. We are going to be talking about, which is going to be a lot of fun, I think, is sales style.
All right.
And I personally would like to kick off with Chris Hackney, if we don't mind.
Ooh,
President.
Do you still do sales?
I was about to say.
For the record.
That's why I started with him.
It's been a while since I've
He
sold.
went from sales to president, so let's see what got him there.
But coming from an underwriter, credit analyst, my sales style was more just informative, education. Here are the rules. Here's the structure. Here's how this benefits you, asking questions, just leading with knowledge. You're not really selling the product because they already need the loan for the most part. They're buying that business. They're buying that real estate. The transaction is happening with or without you. What you're selling is yourself, your bank, and your knowledge and your process, right? So you need to sell in that manner and focus on that and put people at ease and give them reassurance. So I did that a lot. There are some people who are more extroverted, and maybe have a sales style, but Alan, you might.
I mean, I think that, having a lot of energy and being enthusiastic without being gregarious, right?
Right.
I think that's definitely kind of what my energy kind of is, because I sincerely love what I do and I sincerely love working with these folks and getting to know their story. But the best thing that I can offer them is comfort and execution, because I really know what I can do, because I know so well what I can't do, right? So with me, it's almost like, that if I'm telling you we're running here, we're running, right? And I think that the certainty of execution is what someone has to have faith in when they're selecting a partner to work with on a different opportunity. Because at the end of the day, there's a ton of SBA lenders out there, right? And I think that being able to share in that. It's a lot of fun. What about you, Ryan?
The market in SBA lenders has definitely grown. It's not to the point of saturation, but there are a ton of BDOs out there. There are a lot of banks getting into the market. A lot of them are getting nationwide, and more are starting to get better recognition. And there's definitely a lot of money being put out on the street. My sales style has definitely evolved over the years. Starting out as a junior lender, when I first got into SBA, it was very rocky, very stumbling over everything. I was just like, well, this is the rules. You do this, and you do this. And it was kind of like, if I got it, I got it. If not, oh, well. But as I started to learn a little bit more from some of the better people that I've worked with and learned from them, I like to differentiate how we're going to lend opposed to other lenders. Because let's face it, the SBA is what it is. They have a very set of rules. It's priced pretty much the same, parity across the board, that every bank that picks it up knows how to do an SBA loan, right? So we have to set ourselves apart. And I'm like you, Al. I sell on execution, I sell on knowledge, and I sell on being creative with the structure. I can't tell you how many times I get a call from a broker saying, hey, I need to see if you can get this done. We were just at XYZ Bank, and they could only get it done this way. And they said cash flow didn't work, and we just weren't able to get there. I heard that you can do a structure differently and maybe have a different take on it. I love those type of challenges. I like to get something where a bank's turned it down because they didn't structure it the way that the customer needed it, and be able to flip it around and close.
Yeah.
Because that will not only create a referral source, but it will create fans.
Yeah, builds trust.
Builds trust. And I would rather have fans than just referral sources chasing after fees, right?
You got fans?
I got fans, man.
Me and you are different BDOs for sure. I need some more
Like
fans.
and subscribe.
Like and subscribe to Story.
Yeah, Krogi fans.
Krogi fans. Hey,
Yeah,
I'm registering that. That's trademark. TM, baby.
Right.
Ray already patented it.
I think what you guys have said so far has been spot on. I mean, I like what Chris said about knowledge, because I think that the way that I approach my sales style is that I really just try and educate the customer as much as possible. I'm very much like, hey, here are the rules of SBA. Here's how it can be used for your transaction. But then I'll also tell them, here's what a bank's actually going to do.
Right.
Because what the SBA will allow you to do and what a bank will actually approve you to do are two different things. They are not the exact same thing. So I make sure people know where the guardrails are. Hey, seller note can be used for 100% financing. Probably won't though.
Yeah.
Right.
You're probably going to have to bring at least 5%, but I want you to know how the rule works.
I was running a scenario, and our chief credit officer, right? He's one of the coolest dudes ever. And
one of the best I've worked for.
for real,
Great.
guy, helps out in a ton of ways, real smart. And
That's a great compliment.
no, seriously, he's, solid. But I was like, hey, they want to do this one zero down, right? And he goes, why? I'm like, well, it is like, they want to borrow $4 million, right? Like,
Right.
what's going on here? And I had no good response to go, thanks for your time.
To piggyback off of that a little bit, and not try to steer
Yeah.
the conversation in a different way, but having a credit manager who can understand and change and bend the rules internally a little bit is a huge plus, because we do, like most banks, we want some skin in the game. We want some down payment.
Right.
But when you have a situation, let's say you've got a manufacturing company and the owner wants to sell it to his vice president.
Right.
Now, a vice president at a small tier 2 manufacturing company is not going to be making enough money to put 5-10% down on a $4.5 million deal. But that company is the success that it is because of that individual.
Right.
So having those conversations with the credit manager, wanting to keep that individual employed and keep that company
And
going.
it helps with sales because
it's
you
huge.
know you can sell that.
And my scenario wasn't that scenario.
There wasn't but that's a perfect situation.
You got to know the guardrails, right? So when you say, like, when you're talking about that, like, it goes back to knowing what you can do and what you can't do. And I feel like that's something I catch myself saying every week, kind of. But dude, like, if you don't know, like, can you imagine if you don't know that you can get a home on a deal, just pumping a term sheet out and hoping? I've seen that done in the industry, right? And it's like, I think we can get this one done, or my car payment's coming up, we got to get it done.
Knowing your own internal shop will allow you to sell with confidence.
That's right.
Right.
And that's really the key in this. And I think that's something that we all kind of have here is that, even if we sell in slightly different ways, we all sell with confidence because we have a proven track record, because we know what our credit box is going to be.
Exactly.
And we know that we understand SOP.
Right.
I know if I put a term sheet out there, it's eligible.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
And not every BDO actually knows that. Sometimes they're hoping and praying that, they just pull PLP
Yeah.
and it doesn't actually go to the mothership because I've seen some things from some banks,
Yeah.
even locally
absolutely.
around here, where I'm like,
Yep.
that's not eligible. And if the SBA finds out about that after the fact, their guarantee is gone. If they want to make that loan, that's their decision. And if you make your payment, no one's ever going to get hurt. But if you start missing payments, the bank's going to lose their shirt on that.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
there's people out there who are selling essentially the wrong thing as well with no confidence.
So I wanted to ask, because we're going into like how great you guys are, obviously all know how to do this. Let's take this to a BDO level where you're new.
Mhm.
How did you learn how to sell? Where did you learn? What are the mistakes you made? How did you evolve into the BDOs you are today? Like, where did you start?
You make a lot of mistakes.
You make a lot of mistakes because the
like,
SOP is not.
And it changes very frequently too.
Yep,
Let's face it.
it
Every quarter
changes.
we get a new update, a new rule change, something changes, and we have to understand that. And it's like anything in life, it comes with reps. And depending on how many reps you do, to get to the perfect sales pitch, to get to the perfect place where you know your guardrails, where you know your credit box, to be able to put a term sheet and have it be identical to the commitment letter, it takes a lot of practice. And the best way to really reduce those reps to brand new BDOs is talk to really good BDOs. Talk to good BDOs, pick their brains, shadow them, be around them, see how they present a deal, see how they structure a deal. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. And more importantly, if you want to be the best BDO out there, like and subscribe to the BDO Show.
Hey.
Get the horn on that one.
Yeah.
That's a horn one right there.
That horde is going to be the death of us right now. I cannot
love it
believe
too.
we got
I'm
one.
so glad we got that.
my sales style is interesting. It was 110 degrees in Jacksonville, Florida. We're talking about June 15th, 2007. I'm selling paper and ink door to door for commission only. Couldn't leave business cards, couldn't do follow-up, had to build impulse and close on the peak of impulse, right? I learned all this stuff because I just needed a job. I moved to Jacksonville. It was one of those situations where we got 5 guys living in a 2-bedroom and our parents weren't wiring us money anymore. And we were having, but I think that a lot of like that old school kind of sales stuff is like, okay, right? But you got to know what you're doing. Like when it comes to SBA, it's so complicated. I love the advice that you had just shared because I asked a ton of questions. Like when I first got on the bank side, because I used to broker loans, Chris, you were always helpful to me, right? Like guys like Jack, me and Troy came into the bank at the same time, but he had more experience and everyone was always supportive. I think it's important to know that as you're coming up, if you're insecure, you're nervous, or you don't know how to do something, or you don't know why something is a certain way,
Ask.
just ask. If you can't give something away, then you don't have it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you got to find people that have it. And if they really got it, they'll be willing to give it away.
Did you guys have shitty sales jobs before you became BDOs?
I did. I sold, so going back to 98, 99, I was
I was a service advisor for a car dealership.
Okay. You're such a car salesman.
So
I can see that.
I did.
I mean that in the best way possible.
I appreciate it, but that's why
luxury car.
But that's why I go down that route. No, it was for a Pontiac dealership.
And they're pre-owned vehicles, not used cars.
So
That's such a Detroit
and
name.
it wasn't selling them either. It wasn't selling the cars. It was selling the service to the cars. So somebody comes in and they say, "Hey, my muffler's making a rattling noise." I'm all right, I'll write it up and check it out. And then the next thing, you've got some, ambitious mechanic back there that says, "Oh, you need new tie rods, you need new brakes, you need this, you need that." And I'm sitting here going, "Wow, that'd be a great check. Let me see if I can sell this." You try selling a $5,000 repair job to an 80-year-old little lady on her 1991 Pontiac Bonneville. All right, it's going to be a very hard thing
And that's
to
why
do.
Pontiac's no longer with us.
One thing I did learn from that has carried through my 25 years in SBA lending is be authentic.
Yeah.
The one thing that I cannot stand is when I hear of or I hear other BDOs not being genuine with their customer, not telling them the actual truth on how the loan is going to be structured. You can tell when they're just trying to push something because they're desperate for commission comp, that they're just trying to get it done, get it closed, and get it out of their hands. So they'll say and do anything. There's a lot of big banks that still do that.
When you're starting out too in your career, you have that desperation because you don't have a lot of deals flowing in. Like
Right.
we've been here, our phones have been ringing nonstop,
Yeah.
and incessant with answering texts and calls. When you're early on, you don't have that, so there's a desperation in your voice. What I tell our younger BDOs, our junior BDOs that we have at our shop is, sell with confidence. You're a former underwriter, you've been doing SBA for a while, you're confident in some aspect of SBA more than that person you're talking to most likely. So sell with that confidence. And if there's something you don't know, Here's where people go wrong. They don't admit that, hey, let me get that answer. Or I have a great credit manager. That's a good question. Let me get that answer. I'll follow up with you. Instead, they issue an ineligible term sheet. And then that borrower has lost all confidence in you on that deal and future deals. And that referral source will probably never work with you again because you weren't transparent and honest with your knowledge base. But most people just need to know, sell with confidence. If you're in the field, someone gave you a shot for a reason. Right?
Yeah, right.
Unless I'm not going to mention that bank. But you've got some experience behind you, some knowledge base, whatever that is. Sell with that confidence and let the borrower feel that. That's all they want to. I'm going through a residential mortgage right now. I hadn't bought a property in like 10 years, and I've forgotten so much. Even though I do commercial lending, SBA lending, the residential lender working at our bank, she educated me so much. She spent 30 minutes. I'm like, wow, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you could do a HELOC on top as a silent second and all this stuff that I had no clue about.
They call that a jumbo loan, Chris.
Yes, it's a costly home.
Next podcast is going to be
I'm doing okay.
it's going to be at the Hackney Chateau, right on the Bay of Tampa.
But at the end of that call, I didn't really remember a lot of what she said, but I felt confident in that. Hey, if I work with her, I'm going to get the best product. We're going to close on time. She's going to handle everything that I need handled with her. And I just felt better about the transaction.
You gained education from her.
Exactly.
While
the education process is also a great tool for sales.
And every single loan is different.
It's exactly right, Emily. They're so different. And I think, to follow you there, I think that a lot of people get comfort in not just explaining to them what you can do and what you can't do, right? You understand that, yes, you're looking to buy this business, right? And this is how we're going to evaluate it. But I'd like to take it a step further, right? And say, once we figure everything out, you can submit the full package, let's go through everything. The next step is we're going to issue you a term sheet, right? The term sheet is going to be structured in the same way I'm talking to you about this now. And our commitment letter is going to look like our term sheet because I'm going to make sure there's no surprises, right? And, as we're working through underwriting, we get started on pre-close op, all this stuff. I like to let them know the whole shebang so they get comfortable with the process. And in some ways too, they're kind of mentally committing to taking that journey with you at that time. Because now they're like, okay, and then Alan's going to help me through closing, and then we're going to get to, you know what I mean? And then I share about, and as one of my clients, you're in my portfolio, and we're going to stay in touch, because I got an 18-month clawback.
People want to work with people that they like and that they feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
That's really what this comes down to at the end of the day, because as Ryan mentioned earlier, SBA is SBA.
Right.
The product type is the product type. And pricing may differ a couple of points here or there. Credit box may differ a little bit here or there, but realistically, it's really, do I want to work with you?
Yeah.
Right.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Do you like me? Do I like you? Are we going to be a good fit for each other? If you like me, I can take you to the finish line. I have a proven track record of being able to do so. So it's just kind of about selling yourself as the person who can guide them to that finish line.
And I want to ask a loaded question real quick since you mentioned pricing. To new BDOs that they want to hear from us, and I love Al's answer. How do you sell prime plus 2.75 variable?
Like this. I usually just click send. I don't know.
So I sell prime plus 3%, first of all.
He was the first to do it. As soon as they changed the rule, the next day all the term sheets had prime plus 3.
We were in the same office when we got all those updates. He's like, dude, and he got, what was the line?
So I had a broker reach out to me. He's like, man, this is steep, man. Why are you charging them prime plus 3%? I said, because I'm not allowed to charge you prime plus 5%.
I was there. That's a true story. I would go, oh my God, this dude's really got it.
But it goes back to selling with confidence.
Confidence.
Right. That's what it goes to.
But selling rate, what I do, if I could touch on that for a bit, you got to remember borrowers are inexperienced. They most likely have an auto loan or a mortgage. Right. Which are usually fixed rates.
And they're always comparing them to our loan.
And the mortgage I got before the rate hike, and they're locked in at 2.9.
Exactly. So I say, hey, before you get sticker shock, let me explain how SBA rates work. Generally, we're financing goodwill, which we can't liquidate that if the loan goes bad. With more risk comes a higher rate, and these are floating rate loans. Let me tell you how a floating rate loan works, right? It's quarterly adjustable. If prime rate adjusts, then your rate will adjust commensurate with that. So whenever you hear about Jerome Powell, pay attention to that, right? I make a joke about it. Whenever you see it in the news, that matters to you now.
Yeah.
So I walk them through that even before they see the term sheet, and I say, hey, before you get sticker shock, here's how SBA rates work. And that way they say, well, Chris prepared me for this. I knew this was coming. Because if you just send out the term sheet, and it's at 11.25%, and they just financed a Ferrari at 4% or 3%, they're gonna say, what's going on here? So you gotta be proactive with some things that might be uncomfortable.
You got customers with Ferraris on their balance
When I
sheet?
was talking about Ryan.
I was gonna say,
But that's the way that's how I sell the Prime Plus 275 too, because it's all about risk. Because let's face it, if somebody comes to you seeking an SBA loan, there's going to be hair on the transaction. It's going to have something with a higher elevated level of risk, or else they'd go conventional and get a lower fixed rate. But like you said, it's mostly goodwill, usually specialized property. Maybe the borrowers with not all the collateral, so more risk is going to equal to a higher interest rate. Like I've said before, if you've got like a 500 credit score, yeah, you could buy a Hellcat, but your interest rate is going to be 35%. Not saying that the people that come to us have bad credit scores, but the risk is higher just because
Yeah,
the
the
nature
transactional
of
risk.
the transaction.
Right.
So you're going to get a higher interest rate. That's just how banks hedge the risk. By the way, most borrowers don't know we get charged a 0.5 point every year by the SBA for
Right.
servicing these loans, and we get audited by the SBA every year, every other year, and we have to foot that bill. So there's a lot of costs involved that we have to cover as a financial institution that also increases that interest rate.
No, I think that, I was joking before about just, just send it. No, but all jokes aside, I think that they need to make sure that that's part of the discussion, is part of the communication, like Chris, like you said, right? And then when you have to evaluate the opportunity that at this rate, the cash flow is as such that, the business is paying for all of its expenses. It's paying you a salary. It's paying for this note, and it is still making money at this rate, right? So what is your cash on cash return if you can take advantage of this maximum leverage? What are we talking about rate for? I'm talking date the rate, marry the business.
Don't say that.
A lot of the newer BDOs, if you go to a shop where they're doing low fixed rate pricing, your sales skills are going to diminish, or your growth as a
Significantly.
salesperson will be stymied. Because I see a lot of BDOs, they're like, oh, I'm producing 30, 40 million. Well, of course, you're pricing everything at prime fixed for 10 years. That's not that hard, right? Or you're the bank that everyone knows to go to when they want a deal on their transaction.
Right.
So you don't develop those sales skills. So if you're a young BDO, try to look for a shop that prices how 90% of SBA lenders price. Don't go to a shop where they do this kind of, sign and drive, fixed rate financing, because you'll never grow as a salesperson.
I call those BDOs order takers.
Right.
Because that's all they are.
Right.
You generally work at the larger shops. They offer these crazy, promos like 8.5% fixed if there's real estate involved.
Right.
Those who know. Most of their BDOs, they can't sell.
Right.
They can't. They're order takers. They sit back, they let business bankers and they let people walk in the doors and just hand deals on their desk, and they just start writing. They start writing away. And you as a BDO or consumers, if you're out there watching, you've got to understand that you're going to get what you pay for.
Yeah.
All right. You go to a shop that has nothing but cheap rates, you're going to get a BDO, and you're going to probably get a backroom staff that is not going to structure. They're not going to close the deal. You'll be sitting there 6 months later. My phone's going to ring, and now I'm up against the wall because I got to close you real fast because you wasted 6 months at another bank.
How many times have you guys had this happen? You have somebody that you work with, you're working on an opportunity, and they tell you like, listen, man, I love working with you. Thanks for all your help, but I am going to go in another direction, just because of the rate. No problem. Cool. I got a full pipeline. I'm doing my thing. You get that phone call 60 days later from that client, right? How'd that P+1 work out for you, right? Oh,
how fast can you close?
Couldn't get it done.
Right.
There's the problem, right? Then it's like, now it's a fire drill.
Right.
We could have avoided this, and it's something that we all see, right?
Right.
Yeah. I do want to just make it clear, though, for the young BDO out there who is really just getting started, that the type of shop that Ryan was talking about earlier, where maybe you are a little bit more of a quote unquote order taker, I don't think is really a bad place for you to go initially and learn the rules, right? Learn how to be a BDO, learn how to talk to customers, learn SOP. It's a safer environment for you to get your bearings.
Right.
So you don't just get thrown in the deep end.
Right.
Because you don't want that Friday text from Chris Hackney saying, I need you to come to my office. And then
That never happens.
Well, it happens.
It's all virtual.
It's the president of all divisions. They have to make these tough decisions, right? Because if you go into a shop that's a top producing shop and you're not a top producer, you're probably not going to be there
You're
very
gonna
long.
get that Teams invite, and it's your boss at HR.
Exactly. At 4:00 on a Friday. You know what that
Never
means.
accept those. Yeah, by the way, never accept those invitations.
Just run. So
But
I
that's a
guess
good point, Sterling. I can see that. Just don't stay there forever. If you
but
want to
gotta
grow, you
wanna
got to grow. Yeah.
Exactly.
this could get me into my next question would be about mistakes. What kind of mistakes can our BDOs, our new BDOs avoid? Because you guys, you touch on educating your borrower. We literally bring up the word education in probably every single episode we've ever talked about, whether it's you, the borrower, the staff, the people who are educating you guys. What type of mistakes or can we get vulnerable here and talk about some mistakes you may have made in the infancy of your careers?
I made myself a commodity by overpaying a referral source early in my career. I'll keep it real. Like, we had the ability to overcompensate the referral partner beyond what is standard and average.
They're grandfathered in now for life at our bank.
Well,
They are, and it still hurts my pockets to this day.
the audacity.
Wow.
Early on, I think it definitely was a mistake, but it was interesting because, yes, I'm getting all this activity, but it was not a real relationship. It wasn't what you're like, Ron, you're always talking about, the real meaningful relationships. I've got that now, right? Like my partners that I do a lot of business with now, they're not just saying like, hey, I need a drop pants rate and you need to pay me X, right? They're saying, Al, you can get home on this. This is great because it's a net positive for me because if you execute, we get more done in the long run anyway, right? You know what I mean? So for me, it was overpricing. And then all I was a commodity. There was no relationship. Someone was going to offer a quarter point more and they're gone. That's not a relationship. It's not the real game, but it looked good. It looked good on my pipeline.
Yeah, it's relationships, not rates and referral fees.
That's right.
You're selling that relationship.
That's
but
right.
The mistake I used to make, and we talked about it, I think, in one of the earlier episodes, was speaking negatively about the competition.
Oh, about other
young,
people.
you're that desperation, and you get that call where you're getting shopped. That hasn't happened to you a lot, and you don't have a lot in your pipeline. No way I'm losing $1 million or $2 million deal. No way. And you start talking trash about that bank, like, oh, they could never do that, or I got to know that term sheet doesn't look right, and you just go down the path. And I remember there was a loan where the guy said, hey, I don't like the way you're talking about that bank. He was like a CPA or some sort of finance background too, so he kind of schooled me on, hey, you're focused on that other bank too much, and I don't really like the way you're talking about them. Now, we still ended up doing the deal together with us, but he just gave me a tidbit, and I thought about that. I said, yeah, anytime I do get shopped, I take it as an offense. Personally, I get a little, nowadays we're just so busy, who cares? You just go on to the other $50 million you have in your pipeline. But back then, I would take it as an offensive to me. Like I did something wrong, so they went to another bank. And so I would speak negatively about that other bank. And then you just end up making yourself look even worse because you're like, well, gosh, this guy's what's he thinking about me? What's he saying about my PFS or my credit card debt? Like,
Then you progress, everybody knows each other behind the scenes, right? Then it's like,
Big too.
That as well, yeah.
So my mistake, I did the opposite of what you did. I didn't pay at all. So I really never paid brokers or referral sources. I just went out and created relationships with CPA firms, attorneys,
I love that.
agents, things like that. So I didn't pay any referral fees. But then as the competition started getting bigger and referral fees started becoming the norm, I'm like, oh man, this referral I've had forever. So all right, I'm gonna pay you a point. But my problem is I started keeping it a secret from other referral sources. Detroit's not a big town. It's a small town. So
Some
you see
guys
where I'm
were
going
paid,
with
some guys
that.
weren't
Some
getting
guys were
paid.
getting paid,
Put up a
some guys were
billboard.
not. And so I'd get a call from my broker. Hey, I heard that you pay so-and-so a point. I just closed 3 deals with you. Where's my money? And that's so I've got to deal with that now.
They
So
really
that
do.
is Detroit.
They really
don't
do.
play.
And they talk like that too.
those folks start wearing like mink furs out in the wintertime. Like,
And
why is he wearing a
that
mink
was a
fur?
quote too. They said it just like that. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn. Look, got to be consistent. Got to be
Yeah.
consistent with the way you treat your customer base. You got to be consistent with the way you treat your referral base. And you got to be consistent on your rules. Set up rules for how you engage and how you structure deals and how you engage with referral sources so that you're consistent across the board.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I think the big thing that I would say is something that Chris touched on earlier, which is if you don't know the answer, do not make it up. That is a huge mistake I see young BDOs make all the time. where-
Internally and externally.
Yeah,
too,
because they'll do the same thing in credit committee.
Mhm.
When they don't know the answer and then they start fumbling, they start trying to make it something up that they think that the credit officer wants to hear.
Right.
Just don't do that. Okay. I told a guy yesterday, and I've been doing this 8 years now. I told a guy yesterday, I don't know. I'm gonna have to go look in SOP and look that up.
Right.
Yeah.
If I could do
Oh,
that in
absolutely.
year 8, you can do it in month 8.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Take your time. It's okay to say that you don't know something,
Right.
but you are the subject matter expert. I will get back to you shortly, sir, ma'am, with an answer, and just go with that.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
And let's
That's a
face
great
it, a lot
question.
of us
Look
had
that
to
up.
do that about a year ago.
Yeah.
Was it about 6 months
With the
ago
new
when
SOP.
the new SOP came out and we were in this, what,
Oh,
3-4 month
so many
limbo
questions.
Yeah.
where there really was no rules. It was like the Wild West. You know,
That
you-
leveled the playing field too. If you were a newer BDO, 'cause
it
all
really
the rules
did.
changed.
When was the update before that? Like 2 years prior, didn't something happen as well?
it was prior to COVID. It was
Yeah,
like
it's
18,
been a long
19.
time.
Yeah.
When the SOP updates, you guys ever call each other and kind of
Yes.
chat about it?
All the time.
Everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, another mistake is over promising. I used to do that a lot too.
Yeah,
when
then
I was starting out.
I
Deliver.
under-promise now.
Yeah, exactly.
Under
Say,
promise, over deliver.
right,
That's
we
the
can
key.
get this approved in
Right.
2 or 3 days, and the bar was like, "Hey, it's day 10. What's up?"
We have
Yeah,
a
just
2-3
make-
day
That-
review
that's
process,
actually
don't we?
something.
Yeah.
So one thing I do with my sales style is I'm often on the very first phone call with the customer, almost brutally honest about their deal.
Yeah.
Right.
To the point where I'm almost like negging the deal a little bit, where I'm like, hey, like, here are the strengths, but I'm going to be honest. There's some weaknesses here as well. The post-close liquidity is a little bit tight. The cash flow is a little bit tight in the last year.
Right.
Probably going to need a tax return to be filed for 23. I tell them all the reasons why their deal would probably get done and why we're going to move forward. I'm going to give you a term sheet because I'm comfortable issuing a term sheet based on the strengths here. But I want to let you know right now what the weaknesses are that we're going to have to address before we go in front of a credit committee.
Great advice.
But that's honest.
Great.
It's honesty and education at the
Yeah,
same time. And
exactly.
you talked about this in an episode before. You said that you were honest with the borrower. I don't remember what it was, but they came back to you like a year later and they were like, "Thank
Oh,
you
yeah,
for
the
your
better-
education.
better
Like I got
yeah.
that deal done."
Yeah, absolutely. They had not the best credit, tax liens, all the things you don't want. But I
that's
gave
fine.
them a shot, and I said, "Hey, this one's likely not going to be approved."
Mhm.
But they had been like, a lot of banks wouldn't even give them a term sheet or get them in the queue, and I could just see that they wanted a shot.
They got a big PE exit, didn't they?
Exactly. Now they're richer than most
They don't
borrowers
need-
that I've
they
ever
don't need
worked
you
with,
anymore, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they live in Belize and here part time, and they treated me
Amazing,
to
man.
dinner like once a
Good
year.
for
They
them,
treat me to
honestly.
dinner.
That's- yeah.
So they came back
Yeah.
because I was the one that gave them a shot, but I also educated them. Here's why this loan
right.
can't go through at your present state.
You could say not yet, right? What I see a lot of in business acquisitions is seller notes and things like that. Educating people on how we can get creative with elements of forgivable seller notes that can maximize the perception of enterprise value in a transaction. Like when you start getting that deep with folks, they're like, "Oh, this dude's done a couple deals."
Right.
But then you pick apart, like you said, Sterling, you don't know, but here's the deal. I highly suggest that you bring in a partner with you that's going to have stronger liquidity to match. Yes, you've got great experience, but I think that, whatever, is that a possibility? You're in the deal team, right? You're actually assisting. You're not taking an order. You're actually giving direction. And I think that makes much more meaningful long-term relationships as well.
The art of structuring a deal is so important. It's a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right. So, with everything we've covered today, mistakes, your sales style, the things you've learned over the years, the education, can we give new BDOs a quick parting advice to this episode on what they can expect to learn in terms of their sales style? Like, how should they anticipate the changes over the course of their career?
Don't sell with desperation.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you need a deal doesn't make it a deal.
Be yourself. Don't try to be another salesperson. Don't try to be another BDO. You've got your own style. What that's going to give off to the customer is that you're comfortable in your own skin. If you're comfortable in your own skin, you're going to set the tone for the conversation. So be yourself.
Don't be afraid to ask questions and to admit if you are unsure of anything at all. It is way better in the long run to admit that and be authentic than to ever make something up that might not be true.
Sell with confidence. Sell with
Mhm.
whatever your knowledge base is, your expertise. Lean into that, and that's your confidence level, and sell with that.
Sell the way you like to be sold too, right?
That's a great,
Nobody likes to be pitched, and don't be a cheeseball about it.
because I'm a sucker for a good salesman. If I got a good salesman, I'll
best
buy
salesmen
something.
are the easiest to sell.
I bought an entire security system with cameras and stuff for my house. I didn't even need. I had no intention of it. I live in a safe neighborhood. This kid came, knocked on my door, and I was just like, "Listen, because of the universe, I gotta let you pitch me. Like I'm busy, but and I'm standing there with like no shirt on, like shorts, and like
I'd rather not.
Yeah, this kid was so cool, and he's like, listen, like he was just he just kind of informed me about what was possible, and then whatever. And now I got cameras all over my house. So shout out to that salesman from Vivint.
I will say
great.
my piece of advice for the new BDOs is to call these guys. Surround yourself with people like this because they're gonna be there. They're gonna pick up the phone. They're gonna chat with you. They're gonna help educate you because this is what we're here for. So much fun in person today, you guys. We have a couple more episodes coming. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Go ahead, like, subscribe, share, and send topics and suggestions over to the BDOshow@gmail.com, and we will see you on the next episode.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.